Hey, thank you so much for joining me in the studio today. I'm Eric Scott. You might know me as one half of the Journal Fodder Junkies. You might know me as a mixed media artist. But today we're going to take a slightly different turn with things in the studio. Today we're going to work with paper sculpture. During my 20 years of teaching public school, paper sculpture was one of my favorite things to do. And today I'm going to show you how I make one of my paper sculpture monsters. Now, I'm not one to dictate exactly what you are going to make, so if you want to make a monster, awesome, follow along with me, or use some of the basic things that I've been telling you in the video to make your own thing. Make an animal, make a person, whatever you want to make. I'm going to focus on making a monster, and like I said, I'm going to show some very basic techniques for doing that. So before we dive in, let's talk about the materials you're going to need. So first of all, you're going to need some paper. I've got some larger sheets of some construction paper here. Use any kind of construction paper that you have. True Ray construction paper works awesome. So I've got some big sheets, and I've also got some scraps here that I can use for the details. Of course, we're going to be cutting paper, so you need a pair of scissors. We're going to be gluing, so I've got some Elmer's glue there. You might want to draw some things or trace some things, so I've got a pencil and I've got a ruler just in case I want to do some straight lines. So that's what you're going to need in order to make your paper sculpture. So let's go ahead and let's get started. Now, before we begin, I just want to stress that this is not just for kids. You might think, oh, this is just a kid's thing, but it's fun. It's great to do. So if you are a kid or a kid at heart and you want to do this, have some fun. Don't let anything stop you from creating your own paper sculpture creation. So let's go ahead and get started. I've got my basic materials now already, and I'm going to start off with a piece of paper. I think I'm going to make a purple monster. Like I said, when I was talking about materials, you can use any size that you want. So I've got my piece of purple. I want to make a cylinder. That's how I'm going to start off. So what I like to do is kind of roll up the paper first. Just roll it up nice and tight. I'm trying not to bend it or put any folds in it. And so I just roll it up for a moment and let it sort of just hold it. And what's going to happen is it's going to make the paper curve. That's going to make it easier. So this is purple. It looks a little bit bluish in the video, but it is a purple. I got my Elmer's glue, and I'm going to glue one side here because I'm going to roll it up into a cylinder. So I'm just going to take my glue bottle. I like to use a line of glue, but for little kids, I always talked about just a dot, not a lot. So a nice thin line of glue, and like I said, for little kids, I always taught them just a dot, not a lot. So you could do dots of glue all the way down. So dots or lines. Okay. And I'm going to turn it this way because I'm going to take this and I'm going to roll it. Now I'm not going to roll it real tight like I did. I just kind of want this edge to be like right about here. So I kind of roll it up and I tuck it under. I tuck it inside of the cylinder. And so it's like a little pipe, a tube. I can stick my hands in, and I'm just going to have to wait. I always get asked, well, how long do you have to wait? Well, you're going to have to wait a minute, 30 seconds. Depends on how much glue, depends on how humid it is. There's all kind of factors. I usually find 30 seconds to a minute is pretty good. So as I do this, if I rub it and really press down on top of it, that's going to definitely help. So rub, 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 and there we go. I've got my cylinder here. Now, I could leave it like that and that could become the body of my monster, but I'm going to turn it into a prism, and I can either do a square prism or a rectangular prism. So this is the seam. I don't want to see that, so I want that to be on the back. So I'm going to kind of make sure that's in the back, and I'm going to flatten it. I'm going to squish it flat. I can take my thumbnail, I can take my scissors. I want to make a nice crease, and I do that to both sides. So I make a nice crease, okay? And I can do a square prism or a rectangular prism. I'm going to show you both. So with a square prism, I kind of hold this up, and you can see how it's like a football shape or an eyeball shape. And what I want to do, these are going to be the corners of my square. So if I squish it flat again and make sure that those corners line up, or mostly line up, and I can squish it flat again, and that's going to give me my square. So I've got my square prism. Now, that's a little bit narrow. If you don't want to do a square prism, you can always do a rectangular prism. So I've got another piece of paper over here, and I'm going to turn this into a rectangular prism. So I'm going to start off the exact same way. I'm going to roll it, or I'm going to squish it flat. I'm going to take my scissors or my thumbnail or something to really make sure that the creases are really pushed down. Okay. Now again, I've got that football shape. And what I want to do, instead of squishing it so that they line up, I want to squish it so they're off a little bit. So there's a corner, there's a corner. So when I squish it flat, it's going to give me two sides that are different lengths. And again, take my scissors, bam, 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 kind of flatten my creases a lot. And then when I pop it open, I've got more of a rectangular prism. So this is going to become the head and the body. So I like to do the head and the body of my monster together, but it's a little bit long, and I'm going to cut off the bottom. So this is where a ruler can come in handy, okay, and a pencil. Now, if you don't want to use a ruler, you can just kind of cut it. So, but if I want it nice and straight, nice light line, and then I can cut on my line. And I'm noticing that the top up here is a little bit uneven, so I can take my scissors and I can cut off the top and make it a little bit more even. Okay. Now on this piece of paper, you might not be able to see it, but I can still see the pencil marks. So I'm going to erase the pencil marks. Alright, so I've got basically two rectangular prisms. So I've got that one and this one. Now I'm going to use this. I'm not going to throw it away. I hate to throw away stuff. But the nice thing is this is the same size as my rectangular prism. So I'm going to turn this into the mouth of my monster. You don't have to do this part. You could just make this the head and the body, or this could be the body of a creature. You could have four legs coming out, a tail, however you want to make it. But I'm going to make it so that it stands up, it sits up on its own. I'm going to lay it down now so you can just see me work. But what I'm going to do is turn this into a mouth. So I'm going to start, and I'm going to cut off the back. And what I'm going to do, so I'm on the side, and this is going to be the front, and I'm going to cut a nice curve to the top like that. I'm going to do the same thing on this side, and I'm going to do, make sure you don't cut here. I want to cut, this is the front, so the curve's going to go this way. You could just cut a straight line here, but the idea is that this is the back part where that seam is. I can get rid of that. I don't need to save that. But now this is going to be the mouth, and I can glue it on, kind of maybe if you see it from the side. So if I glue it on like that, make it jut out so I can put teeth and maybe a tongue sticking out. So I'm going to kind of open it up, and I'm going to put some glue on sort of the inside. Alright, I could spread the glue with my finger, and then if I get glue all over my finger, I can just rub my fingers together, and that's going to make the glue dry and go away. So I'm going to take this and stick it at the bottom here, about halfway on. I'm going to hold it for a few seconds, and then I'm going to turn it this way and do the same thing. And I want that to kind of make a nice little rectangle, about the same size. So again, if I hold it this way, this is like the jaw jutting out. So it's going to go this way, and I can make teeth and a tongue. I'm going to put the eyes up here, but that gives me the beginnings of my monster. Okay, so now that he's started, I can start thinking about some legs, some arms, some other things for this guy. So let's kind of maybe think about eyes. How am I going to do the eyes? So if I take my scraps of paper here, okay, I've got some white, I've got some black. Some people just want to draw them on. I'm going to cut the eyes out of paper. So I've got some white, I've got some black for the pupils. And I got to think about, well, what color eyes do I want him to have? Maybe he's going to have some green eyes. But I like to put some kind of like something around the eye. So I don't have it over here. Let me grab some purple that I didn't get. All right, so I'm going to use this as the beginning. Now, if I want things to be exactly the same size, I can cut off a piece of paper and I can fold it in half. If I fold up that little piece of paper, let me get some of this stuff out of the way, and then I can cut. Now, if you wanted to, you could draw, but I always like to think about like I'm drawing with my scissors. And these don't have to be perfect circles, but these are gonna be like purple rings that the eyes are in. So if I take both of them and open them up, they're exactly the same. So they're gonna go like that. And if they stick off the sides a little bit, awesome. So now I want to cut white. Let me go ahead and put these back down here because that's where I want to work on them. So I'm going to take white, do the same thing. I'm going to cut off just a little bit. So I don't need to use that whole piece. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to fold it in half. And this time I'm going to cut out circles, or these aren't actual perfect circles, they're ovals. So I'm going to cut out some nice ovals, a little bit smaller than the purple ones. Now it looks like I may have made them a little too big, so let me trim off a little bit more. Now notice that I'm turning the eyes. I'm turning my shapes, the paper, not so much my scissors. That just makes it easier to cut. Alright, get some of these scraps out of the way. Alright, and then when I open them up, and so you can see when I glue them down, they're just going to have this little ring of purple that goes around. Okay, so take that, oops, and I'm going to put some glue. Make sure that, all right, put some glue on there. Okay, and then I'm going to stick that one down. And do the same thing with this one. So I'm going to continue this with the green for the iris part of the eyes and the black for the pupils. Okay, so I've got my eyes done, or pretty much done. So I'm going to go ahead and glue those down. I like how they're sticking off the edge over here. So a little bit of glue, just on about half of the eye. And I'm going to stick it on, but remember, you want to hold it. So I'm going to stick my fingers inside and just hold it for about 30 seconds until it really starts to stick. So often I've seen students do this and they don't hold it long enough and things fall off, and then what they feel like is like, oh, it's not sticking, so they want to put a lot more glue on it. And then they put so much glue on it that it's going to take 10, 15, 20 minutes to really dry. So if we can avoid so much glue, and we really want to hold it down until it starts to stick. Okay, so got my monster's eyes on. Alright, so now maybe I want to go ahead and do some teeth, maybe I want to do a tongue. So I'm going to get this little scrap of white left over, so this is going to be perfect. I'm going to cut 2 teeth out. I'm going to make them sharp and pointy. I like to make my monsters kind of silly looking, but that doesn't mean they can't have some sharp teeth. So I'm going to put some glue on the very bottom of the tooth so that I can stick it underneath. So remember, this is his mouth, So if I can stick the tooth in, and I just want to put my finger inside just to hold it. Again, I kind of clamp it down with my fingers for about 30 seconds or so. Alright, do the same thing for this tooth. It's got a little bit of glue on that side. Let's put it on this side. Again, I can kind of stick my finger in there and kind of clamp it down for a few seconds. Alright, so there's the beginning of my monster. Now I'm going to start adding some more stuff. Okay, I'm ready to move on with my little monster. So I'm not quite done with his mouth. I want to give him a little tongue there to stick out. So if I take some pink here, I'm going to cut sort of a long tongue shape. And again, you can always draw it first, make it nice and round for the tip of the tongue, not too fat because I want it to fit between the two teeth. So I want to have it kind of stick out and then curl. So let me show you a way to curl. There are a couple different ways, but if I take a pair of scissors, leave them closed, and what I'm going to do is I want to stick the paper between my thumb and the scissors, and if I pull down, they'll start to curl. So I'm not holding so tight with my thumb that it's going to rip the paper. Some people might know this from doing ribbon. So if I do that a few times, I can get it to curl. And then if I want to, I can maybe fold a little bit of a tab right there. Okay, and then I want the tip of the tongue to curl up the opposite way. So I just kind of roll it like that, and then I can glue that in the back like that. So if I take a little bit of glue, okay, so I'm putting it on the back. I could glue it kind of coming out of the mouth, but I'm going to glue it onto the head, onto the kind of the face part. So again, I'm going to stick my thumb up in there. So now he's got his tongue sticking out. I'll hold it for a few moments until it's really stuck. And there, he's sticking out his tongue. Okay. Alright, let's move on to some arms and legs. I like to, there are a couple different ways of doing it. I could just cut out strips and glue them on. If you don't have a paper cutter, I'm fortunate, I have a paper cutter in my studio. So I have somewhere up over here, I've already cut some strips of paper using my paper cutter. But if you don't have a paper cutter, that's why you might use a ruler. You can draw strips and cut them pretty straight. So I could just take and glue the strips on, cut them to size and make arms, but there's another technique that I like to do. So I'm going to clear this out because I need some space. And I have orange and yellow for a reason. I'm going to start down here. I'm going to make a right angle, kind of like the letter L, and I'm going to put a couple dots of glue. And this is a technique that I learned a long time ago, and I call it cat stairs. I don't know if it has a typical name. Some people call it Jacob's ladder. Some people call it a paper spring. But it's basically folding these two strips over each other. So again, I want to hold it 30 seconds to a minute to let it really start to set and to dry. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to take the one that's on the bottom, so the yellow in this case, and I'm going to fold it over top of the orange, and notice how I make it really fold right here at the edge of the orange. And then I'm going to take the orange, I'm going to fold it over the yellow. Notice that I do not pick it up. So if this is your first time doing cat stairs, don't pick it up off the table, because what happens is sometimes we pick it up and we don't pay attention and we end up folding it, and it ends up just being a big wad of paper. So by leaving it on the table, I can fold it. And I just want to do that back and forth. So whichever one's on the bottom, so here's the orange over the yellow, yellow over the orange. You could do this with the same color, but I like using two different colors because it really gives it a nice effect and it really shows off that cat stairs. And I'm just going to continue doing that until I get to the end. So yellow over orange, orange over yellow, and I'm really trying to make sure that I'm taking my time so I get really nice even folds. Okay, so I'm running out of paper and that's fine. Now I have an option. I have to see how long is this. Okay, so that's not super duper long. So those long strips that I had didn't add up to too much, but maybe those would be perfect size for arms sticking out. So I think I'm going to use those for the arms. So what I can do is I'm going to take the yellow, just fold it over one more time, and then I'm going to cut off this extra orange, and then just put a little bit of glue right there, and then bend that down and hold it. Again, this is a spring, so it kind of opens up. I can kind of make it a little bit longer, but I don't want to pull on it too much. So that's just going to stick out. Oops, it's not sticking. All right, and then I want to glue it on, so I'm going to put a little bit of glue on here, and then glue it to the side. So I'm going to have maybe right about there. And again, if I can stick my hand inside and have my fingers underneath it, I can squeeze it and hold it until it sticks. Okay, so then he's got a little arm sticking out there. So I'm going to go ahead and do that to the other one and get that glued on. Okay, so two arms. I'm going to do the same thing for the legs, but I'm going to use more strips to make the legs longer. So I'll show you how I do that. So I'm going to start off the legs the exact same way. So I take my yellow and my orange and I'm going to glue them together the exact same way. Then put my orange down. So in order to make a longer cat stairs, I need longer strips. But the problem is if I glue something onto this now, it's too long. It gets real floppy and sometimes it rips, or I don't fold it that well. So I want to hold this down for a moment and then just start off the way I've done before. So yellow over orange, orange over yellow. Okay, so I'm at the end just like I was before, but I haven't put any glue on here yet. So I went ahead and I folded them, but I'm going to unfold the last part, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take two more strips and I'm going to glue them down. So I'm going to glue the orange so it's horizontal, and I'm going to glue the yellow so it's vertical. And then this way I will get a spring that is twice as long as the arm ones. And then I just pick, oh, actually I gotta do the one that's on the bottom, which is yellow. Yellow over orange, orange over yellow. And again, gotta make sure I fold it nice and neatly. Oops. It's getting away from me. And then I just continue. And like I said, I end up with a spring that's about twice as long as the arms. So when I go to glue this down, I'm just going to glue it so that it's coming straight out of sort of what would be the mouth, so that'd be his legs, like his body sticking out. So the idea is that he will be sitting down and that the legs will be sticking out. I could glue him inside, but then he wouldn't sit up or stand up very well. So a little bit of glue. And you notice that it actually twists as it comes out, so you do have to keep that in mind. So glue that right down there. Oops. Again, trying to stick my fingers underneath just so I can clamp it down, and so it's really going to stick. Alright, so then he's got one leg sticking out now. Now I'm going to go ahead and do the other leg. Do it the exact same way. Alright, and so there I've got 2 arms and 2 legs. Now I need some other details. Need some things like hands and feet and hair, and then anything else that you want to put on them. So let's go ahead and think about how we're going to do that. So let's go ahead and start with some feet. I'm thinking maybe need to have some purple there, so I'm going to grab some of this purple that we used earlier. I want to make the feet just like I did the eyes. I'm going to make them the same. So if I cut out a piece of paper and again fold it, if I wanted to make them different, I could. I want them to be kind of big, and I can do any kind of foot that I want. So if I wanted to, I can give them toes, maybe give them some big feet, and some, just making sure I'm not cutting off the edge. So maybe give them some toes. Maybe make this a little bit more square at the bottom. Okay, so we've got a couple feet, and glue those on like that. Okay, so he's got some big feet. Now let's do some hands. Maybe I want to do the same, do some purple hands. Now this time I want to have a little tab, so you can always draw these first if that's a little bit easier, just so you can visualize. Kind of give them some mitten-like hands. Okay, so the idea is that I have this little part here that's going to be a tab because I want this to stick out like that. If I glued it on now, it's going to be kind of facing an odd direction. So if I take, I think I want the thumb up, so if I take this and fold it back and make a little tab, a little flap, then I can take it and stick it on. Again, just hold it for a few moments, 30 seconds to a minute. And, oops, didn't hold it long enough, fell off. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing, again making sure that I've got it turned the right way. It'll fold, and a little bit of glue. Okay, so he's got some hands, he's got some feet, got his tongue on. I think I want to give him some horns sticking out. So maybe I'll go back to some white. And this time I think I want the horns to be maybe one a little bit bigger than the other. And so I'll go ahead and cut. I like to cut out a big shape first, and then I can cut the shape of the horn. I'm just going to do a simple curved horn. Okay, so let's see how big that is. Now, that's pretty big, but I'm going to fold back, just like I did for the hands, I'm going to fold back a little bit of this, and that's going to be a flap. So I take my glue. I can always spread it with my finger. That's going to help it stick a little bit quicker. Just stick it right in the middle. I'm just going to hold it. So that little flap, that little tab there, allows the horn to stick straight out. And then do one from the other side. Actually, maybe what I'll do, maybe I want to do a smaller one, so that's the extra piece that came from this other horn. So maybe I can cut that. And so now he's got a smaller one. And again, go ahead and fold that little tab, little flap. Okay, so he's coming along quite nicely. The one thing that I don't like, he's got this big hole in the top of his head. No one wants a hole in the top of their head, so maybe I can do something to fill that in. So I'm gonna grab, let's see, yeah, I'm just gonna grab, I think I'm gonna maybe do some light blue. That might be kind of cool. So I'm gonna cut some strips. And I want them all to be kind of the same length. So I'm going to cut out a big rectangle. And so now I'm just going to cut a whole bunch of strips for hair. Okay, so I could just glue it so it's straight out, but then that's a little weird. So like I've done before, like I did with the tongue, I'm going to curl it a little bit. So remember, I put the paper between my thumb and the scissors. I don't have to have the scissors open. And I'm going to pull and basically make that paper bend. And so some of those will curl over. And I'll just go ahead and glue a little dotted glue on there. I'm just going to glue it right in there. And then I'm going to kind of do that all the way around. Maybe not use every single space, but just to allow that to start to give him some hair. Okay, so now that I have sort of the outside, I want to do something to kind of cover at least a little bit of that inside. So I can curl it back the other way. So I curl back the other way and then maybe curl it a little bit up. And then I can glue that in. So what that does, it kind of will cover up that hole a little bit. So I'm kind of doing that S curve like I did for the tongue. I'm just going to do the same thing, go around and do these all the way around. And that will start to hide the hole in his head. Okay, so pretty much he's done. If I wanted to give him a tail, I could. Maybe some other small details. So I'll go ahead and add a few little details and then I'm going to call him done. One of the things that I like to do, the eyes. So let's go back and take a look at these eyes. They look a little empty, so I'm going to take and cut little tiny circles. So this is a little bit difficult. Actually, I'm going to use the part that I cut out before for the eyes and just trim off that. I'm going to cut a little tiny circle the best that I can. It's a little bit hard to cut tiny circles. And what this is going to be the reflection in my monster's eyes. So it's okay if they're not perfect circles. Just trying to trim off. Okay. So, alright. So see, they're really small. So I take my glue bottle and maybe put a dot of glue on each one. And then the hard part is not to lose these as I pick them up. So sometimes having a little pair of tweezers is good. Alright, haven't lost them yet. Okay, so I think that really just kind of helps the monster pop. And then maybe I want to do little stripes or little dots. I can always take marker or colored pencil too and create some little details. So maybe I want to draw a line on the tongue, maybe I want to put little taste buds on them, but pretty much Little Monster's done, and you can add as many or as few details as you want. So hopefully you enjoyed this video and you got some good ideas about how you can make your own paper sculpture. So anyway, enjoy, have fun, and happy creating.